Hello, my fellows Americans. I, since I immigrated to United States, it's really interesting for me to kind of see these videos where like Americans are trying to see how Europeans are looking at them. And today I'm going to react to this video. I haven't actually seen it yet. I want to keep my impressions fresh, and that's why that is why yeah, going to try to react freshly. But yeah, okay. So without any further
What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about what Europe really thinks about America right.
Well, I have to jump in right here because, for example, I have seen in very plastically, as they would say, how Americans mostly are seeing Europe when I was passing by a monument to fallen soldiers in First and Second World War, and it actually displays on a monument geographic map of Europe going from its western shores up to, well, up to what mostly was a um, Iron Curtain. So Western Europe, that's where American soldiers actually walked up to, and the rest of it is just kind of unknown, uncharted territories for a kind of majority of U.S. public. In their mind, they just kind of heard of it, but it's like, oh, those people over there, they're dangerous. And plus, they're communists. They occasionally go to war much often than, and they're having war now, and they had it recently. And I'm from one of those forsaken places in Europe, Bosnia, and yeah, it's a god-forsaken place. It, I mean, in ex-Yugoslavia, Bosnians were being kind of joked about as the stupid, and you know, unfortunately, now that I'm living in US and that I see Bosnia people, no, I could not say, it's politically problematic right away when you try to mention it. It's just lots of stupid people who are trying to make each other's life much worse than they should. So please, if you do not live over there, do not make those idiots' lives even worse than it is. Okay? Please be kind. Thank you. So let's go on.
Right now. So, today, I want to take a look at this Reddit discussion where somebody said, the rise of the brutal American. Europeans are mystified, disappointed, and frightened of America, a country that you thought you knew. So, given the recent events going on, the policy decisions right now, and honestly, just the things that are being said by the U.S. government and Donald Trump, I am not at all that surprised to hear this. It does make me, honestly very sad to hear that America's relationship with Europe is basically being destroyed in just a matter of a couple of months. That's very sad to me. But I think the best things that us Americans can do is listen and learn about.
Yeah, and do not meld into it. Just stay away, because anything you're going to try to fix, you're just going to make worse. And you just can't kind of deal with shit, with some shit without being smeared in it as well. Just they'll settle down eventually, but unfortunately there are all of these do-gooders around the world. They don't understand anything, and they have a knee-jerk reaction to propaganda in their country about some other place. Propaganda is, of course, generated by ruthless people who are pursuing their own ruthless interests, and then they stir up their own idiots in their own country that to kind of go away over there and do good. And unfortunately, they're just a long time ago, I actually heard a expression from I don't remember kind of who was that. That was a politician, some world politician, that was describing U.S. as a ginormous baby with a stick. A baby that goes around and whatever it sees, it just club it. Because if stick is the only thing, everything looks good to be clubbed. Yeah, that's it.
The European perspective on this stuff, because I think as Americans, we really do get caught up and trapped in our own American bubble. We don't really know what's going on in the rest of the world, or
it's best to stay in that bubble. It might be interesting to look and go like, oh wow, but don't go any further from there. Don't go over there.
A lot of that stuff, and a lot of Americans don't really understand the ramifications of how our decisions as a country affects the rest of the world. Maybe that has something to do with geographically, the United States is far from Europe. As an American, Europe has always felt far away. Like, oh, that's a far away land. I wonder what's going on over there.
Well, it's not that far away. 8 hours of flying over the Atlantic. And, I don't fly that often over there anymore because I kind of too old for all of that flying. 8 hours in a plane is just incredibly boring. It's interesting to go to someplace else, and see, live through a cultural shock. But it's just typical thing. You go to different place over there, and they have different problems, different issues. People who are basically reacting to some different stuff than you have here. I mean, it's really, if you are bored and you have excess funds, you don't know what to do with, that's what you could do. You could travel the world and kind of be a world traveler. I even saw recently one French YouTuber who make himself a quest to actually make those YouTube videos where he goes to travels different countries and wants to tries to kind of persuade people to sleep in their houses with them, in their places. It's an interesting idea. I mean, people are people. People like to hang around, and he's trying to break that that kind of barrier because if you are not breaking a barrier, you're not really getting into people's intimate. They mask, and they won't open up to you. But if you're going to try and kind of break that barrier by doing something that is that is not a social norm, they will react to it and show themselves. I remember as a kid, a small kid, even before actually going to school, we kids like to go out of houses and play together. And when we saw somebody kind of had in a new piece of a clothing, like a new kind of trousers, we would go and kind of pinch them, like, oh, this is a new stuff, we have to test it out. And it wasn't really to hurt that person, but you wouldn't just pinch the traffic, you would pinch the skin a little bit. And it was really a friendly way of kind of getting connected to that person. Like, we just want to be, intimate. You're one of us, you're a fellow. We don't want you to stay distant. Especially if they got some new expensive piece of clothing, they might kind of feel like, oh, look at me, and we would quickly bring him down.
But it's like, hey, with like the internet and stuff now, there's really no excuse to not be educated on a lot of this stuff. And these are matters of extreme importance, whereas I think a lot of Americans kind of have this attitude of, well, we'll just see what happens, tariffs, trade wars, international relationships, that'll all sort itself out, it always does, we'll be fine. And it's like, what a terrible attitude to have. What a terrible attitude to have of, we'll be fine. Yeah, it'll all be good. Like, whatever. So, terrible. So,
that's excellent.
I really want to take a look at this Reddit discussion and hear some
that's my point
opinions from Europeans out there about
just
everything that's happening.
Over here
and more specifically,
monitors in front of me.
Your thoughts on the United States. Because, as I've already said, here in America, we certainly talk about our country, but, we talk about it as Americans. This is our country and we live here. It's not the same as hearing an outside perspective, a perspective of someone on the outside looking in.
And this is very good place for me to jump in. This is because I kind of lived first half of my life outside of United States. I still have that certain view from the outside, but now I'm inside as well, and I do have that inside view as well. So this kind of relation between those two worlds in which I lived and I'm living is really, really interesting.
I think that's super valuable. So let's take a look. 75 years of goodwill down the drain. Oh, no! Oh, boy. Yeah. That's sad. Right. So there are, let's talk a little bit about what's actually going into effect. It's hard to keep up. It's actually hard to keep up with what Trump says on a day-to-day basis about what specific policies, tariffs are actually going into effect. What are just threats? What is real? When it goes into effect changes? I think currently there are, I think I have an article, 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from all around the world, and even more on Canada and Mexico. In response, the EU has announced new tariffs on the United States worth billions of dollars. And I think, funny enough, a lot of Americans don't even realize what's happening, like literally a global trade war.
Let me tell you, it's just rich elites that are trying to, make themselves better, one over the other. But not even that. It's actually over the over rest of the people who are on the bottom, and they are using that as excuse. Those geographical kind of geography they're using as excuse to kind of push down their own ideas, what's good for them, onto you, presenting to you as, oh, those people over there, yeah, we want to fuck them up.
Like, is happening. And a lot of Americans, like, it's not that much of a, like, day-to-day conversation as you would think. Donald Trump has threatened to impose 200% tariffs on alcohol from EU countries.
Well, that's interesting, because I just yesterday bought Bacardi rum, and he's originally from Cuba, but after revolution, Bacardi had to flee, and now he has his operation set up in the United States. Specifically, I know in Florida he has a factory I occasionally was driving by. But I was recently in Cuba as well, and they are suffering. People over there are suffering because of what? Not because of U.S. sanctions. Those are not U.S. sanctions. Those are actually pushback of those Cubans who are taken away, liberated from their own property, and now they are using United States as a global capitalist superpower as a basically a weapon for protecting their own interest. That's it.
Unless you scrap 50% tariffs on whiskey. Yeah, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And yeah, not only just that, but I know, like...
So if you find yourself in that kind of position where two guys are fighting each other, what are you going to do? Say, oh, this guy is good, this guy is bad? Like... Or even much more interesting, there's a joke. I don't know if my English interpretation will come up so good, but let me try it. So I was walking yesterday, and then I come across a situation where three guys are kind of kicking and beating one guy laying down on the street. So what did you do? Well, we beat the hell out of him.
The other week or a few weeks ago, there was the whole huge debacle in the White House with Ukrainian President Zelensky and how he was treated, and basically Trump's rhetoric on how the United States essentially we just care about ourselves. We just care about ourselves and what's best for us, and nothing else matters. And forget everyone else. Ha! Go fix it yourself. Go.
Yeah. Let me tell you a story. I think you might have heard it. That again, I heard it in my own kind of native tongue a long time ago, so I'll have to interpret it now. So, a guy, his wife, and his son are going on a road where a guy is riding a mule or a donkey, and the wife and a son are walking on the side, and then they come across a guy, and he was like, "Oh, man, how could you do that? You yourself a grown man, and you are riding while your wife and son are walking." So the guy dismounted, and he placed a kid on a donkey, and he and his wife walked, and then they come across the next guy, and he was like, "Oh, you young man, how could you do this? You are riding a donkey and your old parents are walking. That's so unseemly. So the guy then mounted his son, and he put his wife on a donkey, and he and his son walked. And then they come across a third guy who said like, "Oh, are you not ashamed, young woman? You are full of energy, but you are allowing your young son and your husband to actually walk while you are so shamelessly riding this donkey." And then the guy said, "Okay, we'll stop. We are stopping here. We are going back to basics. I'm going to ride, and you two going to walk." So what's the moral of the story? Moral of the story that everybody has his own opinion, and you could not please everybody. So you gotta please yourself. Da, 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 da.
Don't care, and it's making the United States very isolationist and not a very good partner. And we certainly live in a day and age where you want to be a global, presence and make deals and peace and partnerships. And we had good relationships with the world, it seemed. And compared to now, what's going on, it's not good. It's not good. I hope it's not the end of manageable relations between the United States and Europe. I'm concerned it might be. I mean, I can't blame
this
Europe.
Kind of turning too long. I had enough of it.
It's hard for me to even get outside.
Man. I'm sorry. I think that everybody who's interested in listening to you until the end could do it, but I feel like a bit sleepy. Catch you next time. Bye bye.